You want to bring that bad luck back in here? That wheezing is ruining the vibe for Jessica's live stream. My father stood in the doorway, blocking the heat, looking down at my 5-year-old daughter who was gasping for air in the freezing snow. We are flushing this mistake down the toilet, he said, staring at us with pure disgust. Get out before I call animal control. He slammed the door in my face. I was not asking for money. I was begging for the nebulizer sitting on the kitchen counter of the house I paid for, while my child turned blue in my arms. It was 11 at night and the temperature had dropped to 10 below zero. The wind outside was screaming like something alive, rattling the windows. But I was on the wrong side of the door. I pounded on the wood until my knuckles cracked. My daughter, Zoe, was wrapped in a thin coat beside me, her chest heaving with the terrifying, whistle-thin sound of a severe asthma attack. I was not asking for an apology. I was begging for shelter for one single night. The door cracked open just an inch. Warm yellow light spilled out onto the snow, hitting Zoe's pale face. My father, Arthur, stood in the gap. He did not look concerned. He looked disgusted. He looked at my wheezing child like she was a stain on his evening. I stared at him. I looked for a trace of the father I thought I had, but I saw only a predator protecting his territory. The lock clicked. That sound was louder than the storm. I stopped pounding. I covered Zoe's ears, turned my back on the warmth, and walked her into the freezing dark. They were not family. They were monsters. And I was done feeding them. We survived that night in a roadside motel that smelled like stale smoke and desperation. I used an emergency credit card I had sworn never to touch, the plastic feeling heavy and shameful in my hand. Zoe fell asleep instantly on the lumpy mattress, her small chest still hitching with the ghost of her asthma attack. I sat in the plastic chair by the window, watching the snow bury my car. And I let the memories come. I let myself look at the ledger of my life that my parents had written for me. They called it the bad omen. It was their favorite story. I was born on the exact day my father lost $50,000 in a bad investment. Jessica was born 3 years later on the day he won a scratch-off lottery ticket. In their superstitious, narcissistic math, I was the debt, and she was the profit. I went back to the day I turned 16. I was lying in a hospital bed, my left leg shattered in 3 places, from a car accident that was not my fault. I was in agony, waiting for my mother to hold my hand, to tell me I was going to be okay. Instead, Linda stood at the foot of the bed, looking at my cast like it was a personal insult. She let out a long, heavy sigh that sucked the air out of the room. Of course you broke it, she said, her voice flat. You break everything, Natalie. You just cost us our retirement. That sentence became the cage I lived in for 13 years. They told me the insurance company denied the claim. They told me they had to take out massive loans to save my leg. They told me I owed them my life, and I believed them. I let that guilt drive me like a whip. I skipped my senior prom to work double shifts at a diner. I went to a state college on a scholarship and lived on instant noodles so I could send them checks. For 13 years, I sent them $2,000 every single month. I thought I was paying off a debt of love. I thought I was buying my way back into their hearts. While I was eating expired bread to make rent, Jessica was driving a Mercedes they leased for her. She launched 3 different fashion startups that failed within months, all funded by mom and dad's savings. When I asked how they could afford it, they told me Jessica was the good luck charm, and investing in her would pay off for all of us. I looked at my sleeping daughter. I realized then that the debt was never real. I had been paying a mortgage on a house I was not allowed to enter. I had been funding the lifestyle of the sister who watched me get kicked out into a blizzard. The guilt that had crushed me for a decade was not a burden I was born with. It was a weapon they had built to keep me compliant. It was not just the cold that woke me up in that motel room. It was the memory of the theft. You see, the eviction was not just about space. It was about liquid cash. I had saved $4,000 in cash, hidden inside an old coffee tin tucked in the back of my closet. It took me 2 years to save that money, skimming $20 here and $50 there from my grocery budget. It was for Zoe. Her legs were starting to turn inward, a structural issue she inherited from my own untreated injuries. And she needed a specialist who did not take our insurance. That money was her future. It was her ability to walk without pain. Just before he shoved us out the door, my father raided my room. He claimed he was looking for stolen property, but he went straight for the closet. He found the tin. He popped the lid and counted the bills right in front of me, his fingers licking the corners of the cash I had starved myself to save. Consider this back rent, he said, stuffing the wad into his pocket. I pay the mortgage, I choked out. I pay the electric. That is for Zoe's doctor. He did not even blink. He just told me I should have thought about that before I brought bad energy into his house. But that was not the part that killed the last shred of love I had for him. That happened 2 minutes later. I was frantically stuffing Zoe's clothes into a garbage bag, my hands shaking so hard I could not close the ties. I heard them in the hallway. I heard Jessica crying. That soft, practiced whimper she used when she broke a nail or wanted a new phone. She was complaining about her aura being damaged by her recent breakup. Then I heard my father's voice. It was soft, gentle, the kind of voice he never used with me. "Here, princess," he said. "Take this. $4,000. It is enough for that healing retreat in Bali you wanted. Go find yourself. You deserve peace." Jessica sniffled. To her credit, she hesitated for a split second. "But what about Natalie? Isn't she broke?" And then Arthur said the sentence that rewired my brain forever. "Don't worry about your sister," he said. "She is used to struggling. It is her natural state." I sat in the motel chair as the sun started to bleed through the thin curtains. I replayed those words. Used to struggling. He did not see my resilience as a virtue. He saw it as a permission slip to abuse me. He believed I was designed to suffer so that Jessica could soar. He stole the money for my daughter's legs to pay for my sister's tan. I looked at Zoe sleeping on the bed. She trusted me to protect her. And I had failed because I was too busy trying to please people who saw me as livestock. I stood up. I walked to the wobbly desk in the corner and opened my laptop. The daughter who begged for crumbs was dead. She died in the snow last night. The woman who opened the computer was a senior compliance officer. I hunt fraud for a living. I track down missing assets for billion-dollar corporations. And for the first time in my life, I was going to audit my own family. People think audits are boring. They think it is just staring at spreadsheets and drinking stale coffee. But I know the truth. An audit is an autopsy. You strip away the skin of lies and excuses until you find the bone. And I am very good at finding the bone. I did not hack into my parents' bank accounts. That is illegal, and I am a professional. I simply used the bureaucracy they did not understand. I went to the library and printed out a standard request for records form. I formally requested my own archival medical and insurance history from the National Claims Database. I had the legal right to see every settlement, every payout, and every denial attached to my social security number. I filled out the paperwork with a steady hand, notarized it, mailed it, and then I waited. The next 3 weeks were a blur of survival. I found a cheap, drafty apartment on the edge of town. I enrolled Zoe in a new school. I worked my job during the day, smiling at colleagues, pretending I was not homeless, pretending my heart was not calcified ash. Every evening, I checked the mail. On a Tuesday, the envelope arrived. It was thick, white, and heavy. I sat at my second-hand kitchen table, unopened mail in front of me, my pulse thumping in my ears. I sliced it open. I pulled out the settlement disbursement record, dated November 2010. My eyes scanned past the medical codes, past the descriptions of permanent tibial shatter and reduced mobility. I stopped at the bottom line. Total settlement amount: $120,450. Status: PAID. The air left the room. They had not been denied. They had not fought for me. They had cashed out. I flipped the page. There was a photocopy of the check. It was made out to Arthur and Linda Miller, guardians of minor. On the back, my father's signature was scrawled in blue ink, bold and arrogant. But I was not done. A settlement proves they had money, but it doesn't prove theft. They could argue they spent it on my medical bills, on rehab, on special shoes. I needed to prove where the money went. I needed the kill shot. I opened my laptop and logged into the county clerk's public records portal. Property deeds and mortgage liens are public information if you know where to look. I pulled up the history of my parents' house, the house I was locked out of. I found the entry for December 2010, 3 days after the insurance check was cashed. Transaction type: mortgage satisfaction. Principal payoff. Amount: $120,450. I stared at the screen until the numbers blurred. It was not an approximation. It was not about the same amount. It was a penny-perfect match. Down to the zero. I did not feel sad anymore. I felt a cold, hard clarity settling over me like armor. They did not go into debt to save my leg. They used my broken body to buy their freedom. Every time my leg ached in the rain, every time I limped after a long shift, I was paying for their roof. I had bought that house with my pain, and they had kicked me out of it. I printed the documents. I put them in a crisp manila folder. I wasn't the ungrateful daughter anymore. I wasn't the bad omen. I was the landlord. And it was time to collect the rent. I did not call my parents immediately. I could not. I needed a witness. I needed someone whose authority they could not dismiss or gaslight. I went to Dr. Elena Vance. She was the director of the Compliance Institute where I worked, a woman who terrified most of the staff but who had always respected my work. I laid the folder on her desk. I didn't cry. I didn't ask for pity. I just walked her through the timeline. The accident, the settlement, the theft, and the mortgage payoff. She looked at the documents for a long time. When she finally looked up, her expression was pure steel. "This is constructive trust fraud," she said. "In this state, if a guardian uses a minor's funds to purchase property, that property belongs to the minor." "I know," I said. "I want it back. But I need them to admit it. I need a confession that ties the money to the house." Dr. Vance leaned back. "What do you need from me?" "A venue," I said. "And an authority figure." 3 days later, we sprung the trap clean, simple, powered by my parents' greed. I called them sounding small, broken, desperate. I told them I'd hit rock bottom and was applying for a $300,000 victims assistance grant to cover Zoe's extensive surgery. "There's a catch," I whispered. "The committee needs proof my original guardians were financially responsible, proof the money won't be wasted." My father's interest sharpened. "Why would we do that for you?" "Because if it's approved," I said, "there's a retroactive fiduciary stewardship bonus, $50,000 paid directly to the guardians who managed the original estate." I heard him cover the phone. I heard him whisper to my mother. The bait did everything. Cash, zero work, and ego validation. "Fine," Arthur said, forcing a magnanimous tone. "We'll help. One last time. You have to meet me at the institute," I said. "The director needs to witness the signatures." They agreed instantly. They didn't ask about Zoe. They didn't ask where I was living. They only asked what time to show up for the check. They arrived right on time in their Sunday best, my father in a too-tight suit, my mother in her church pearls, and Jessica beside them, scanning the lobby like she was pricing the furniture. Dr. Vance met us in a glass-walled conference room, all crisp bureaucracy and steel. "Please, have a seat. We need to verify custodial history before we can release the fiduciary bonus." A heavy stock check lay face down on the table. My father couldn't stop staring at it. He smiled toward the corner camera. "We're happy to help. We always put our children first." I stayed silent and watched them perform. "Did you receive the insurance settlement funds in 2010? Dr. Vance asked, pen poised. "And can you swear under penalty of perjury those funds were used to secure the household stability?" Arthur puffed up. "Absolutely. We managed every penny. We put it into the house so Natalie always had a roof. We sacrificed to keep that home safe for her." Cold adrenaline slid down my spine. He'd said it on camera. "Excellent," Dr. Vance said. "Then sign this affidavit of asset tracing confirming the use of the funds so we can release the bonus." She slid the document across. Arthur didn't read it. He didn't read the constructive trust language, the definitions, the fine print. He only saw fiduciary bonus, $50,000. He signed with a flourish and passed it to Linda. She signed too, smiling at me like I owed them gratitude. "Done," Arthur said, tapping the paper. "Now where's that check?" I stood, lifted the affidavit, checked the signatures, and met my father's eyes. "Thank you," I said evenly. "You just admitted, under oath and on camera, that you used my disability settlement to pay off your mortgage." Arthur frowned. "So? That's what you wanted?" Dr. Vance removed her glasses. All warmth vanished. "Actually, Mr. Miller, in this state, property purchased with misappropriated funds from a minor is subject to a constructive trust. Since you admitted the house was bought with Natalie's money, the house doesn't belong to you." She let the silence hang. "It belongs to the victim." Arthur's smile cracked. "What?" The door opened. A uniformed sheriff's deputy stepped in. No handcuffs, just paperwork. "Mr. and Mrs. Miller, I'm serving you a temporary restraining order on asset disposal and a notice to quit for trespassing." "Trespassing?" Linda shrieked. "It's my house." "Not anymore," I said. "You're squatters in my property. I'm evicting you. You have 24 hours to vacate." My father went gray, looking from the documents to me to the deputy, as the truth landed. The trap was never the bonus. It was the signature. Jessica rose, eyes wide, rage pure and sharp. Not because they stole from me, but because they got caught. "You idiots," she hissed. "You lost the house? Get out," Dr. Vance said. Now, the walk to the lobby was the longest trip of my father's life. No cuffs, something worse. Total, irreversible defeat. The sheriff followed behind them like gravity. At the glass doors, Arthur spun back, panic replacing arrogance. "Natalie," he pleaded, voice cracking. "You can't do this. I'm your father." I felt nothing. "No," I said. "You're a tenant who didn't pay rent. And your lease is up." I turned to leave. But the final blow wasn't mine. Arthur reached for his golden child. "Jessie. Honey, bring the car around. We'll stay with you until this blows over." Jessica didn't move. She stared at her phone, scrolling the digital copy of the lawsuit the sheriff had just emailed her as a named interested party. She looked up, face set in pure self-preservation. "You committed fraud?" she snapped. "You signed a confession?" "Dad, I have a brand. I can't have this attached to me." "We did this for you," Linda screamed. "I didn't ask you to get caught," Jessica shot back. "My Uber's 5 minutes away. You're on your own." And she walked out without looking back, leaving them stranded on the sidewalk with nothing but their Sunday clothes and a court summons in their hands. I sold the house. I didn't even step inside to pack. I hired a crew to clear it and listed it the day the eviction was finalized. It sold in a week. I took every cent of the equity my broken leg had paid for and started over. Zoe's surgery. Then a clean, bright condo across the city with a security system no one else can touch. My parents live in a 1-bedroom rental near the highway. Their credit is wrecked. They still call from blocked numbers. I never answer. I don't need to. Last night it snowed again. I sat watching flakes drift past the glass while Zoe slept, breathing easy, safe and warm. I walked to the front door and turned the deadbolt. Click. It was the most beautiful sound in the world. Have you ever sacrificed everything for people who wouldn't even open a door for you? Tell me your story in the comments. I want to know I'm not the only one.